I did.
I got
Okay, now I
mine.
think we're good. Perfect. That's my least favorite thing with Zoom these days is depending on who's the host and who pushes the record button, it can do all sorts of funky things. Sure. Okay. Everybody should be able to see my screen.
Looks great,
Okay,
Angela.
good. All right. Well, in the essence of time and being prompt and honoring your time and space that you have brought into this Zoom room with us today or watching the recording back, I think we'll just get going. We'll do introductions in just a second, but I wanted to kick off by saying that Josh and I are so glad that you're here, however you're coming in and joining us. And we're honored to bring two great groups together that I know have a lot of synergy and connections. But having our friends from the American University in Cairo here, and your warm welcome to have us spend this hour with you, along with all of our friends joining us from the MyFest community, and from wherever you are around the world, however you came to be in this room today, we are so glad that you're in it. And we want this to be some time where you can step back from a lot of the noise around AI and think about it as colleagues, think about it as peers, as educators, but also as allies and advocates for the work that we're doing for our learners. And that does not matter where you're starting from. It doesn't matter how deep you're into this work, how new you are to this. You're bringing into this space your humanity, your empathy, and your care, and we really want to honor that with this time. So the reason we're all here today is a rather simple one. AI has become a part of how we teach and how we work, whether we invited it into the space or not, and how we choose to meet it, which Josh and I like to think of as meeting it with curiosity, meeting it with criticality. But however you choose to meet it, we as educators are going to shape what teaching and learning become. And that's really what today is about. So not a tech demo, not, hey, let's look into the technology aspects of AI, but let's look into our role as humans in how we interact with AI. So, as promised, Josh and I are going to introduce ourselves, but you'll probably hear us a couple of times all throughout say, hey, we've been talking too much. We want to turn it over to you. We would love for the chat to be a dialogic space all throughout. So, definitely, if you don't have it open, open it up. And while we're introducing ourselves, we'd love for you to drop a little bit of information about yourself in the chat, where in the world you're joining us from, so that we can get to know the room as we go along, especially for all of our new friends that we have within this space. So, for those that I've not yet met, I'm Dr. Angela Gunder. I have a lot of hats that I wear. I'm going to be wearing a couple of different hats today as we go along. But I lead a collaboratory called Open Culture. We purposefully call it a collaboratory because we engage with folks from all over the world in doing this work together as a community, as opposed to just as individuals. And our work at Open Culture has been living at the intersection of academic innovation and open education. But in most recent times, there's been a strong focus on AI and specifically plural approaches to AI literacies. And my own scholarship actually comes from my work around literacies and specifically within the open side on Open Remix. But as an evolution of that work into the age of AI, my colleagues and I created a taxonomy called the Dimensions of AI Literacies that was developed through research that UNESCO IITE commissioned and has since been given several awards from all sorts of really awesome people, including the Hewlett Foundation and MIT Open Learning. In addition to the open culture work, I also teach online. I've been teaching online for many, many years. I like to say, so it's been about 20 years, which is crazy to say that out loud. Either hybrid blended or fully online. But I'll steal from my buddy, Dr. Christy Ford, who's one of the co-authors of the taxonomy, who says, and I started this work when I was 2 years old. I'm only 22 right now, so young and doing all of this work in all sorts of amazing ways. But I teach online for the College of Information Science at the University of Arizona. So, like many of you, I'm in the classroom, and as I'm working through these questions that we'll present with you today, just know that I'm asking them for my learners, for myself, in addition to all of the institutions and groups that we help all over the world. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Josh to give an introduction while I peek at the chat.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, take a look at the chat.
Excited.
What uh breadth of experience and depth of experience from Cape Town, from Pennsylvania. How cool. And then of course our friends at American University in Cairo representing really well here. So thank y'all for putting in the chat. Keep those coming. And it's cool to see what you're doing too, whether you're teaching a foreign language or teaching math or teaching at a high school, right? This helps us understand where we're all coming from. So where I'm coming from is the field of writing studies. So I'm going to go way back to when I first entered into higher education, and I was a faculty member at a medium-sized university here in the States. And I didn't grade online. I didn't do very much online, and I wasn't a huge fan of trying to go in that direction until I met my first instructional designer. Instructional designers change lives, and this person changed my life. He is still a champion of mine over my career. I've got a few of those in my realm. Angela, of course, is one of those. And we saw what was possible with technology. And so I was a first generation college student, really believed in the power of education, particularly a college education, and saw technology as a way to spread that to more people, right? To make it accessible, to make it personalized, to honor what experience, particularly adult learners, were bringing back in, and that's where my start in online learning really, was motivated. So I've bounced not bounced. I don't like that phrase. I've moved across different roles from faculty to leadership in online digital learning, instructional design roles in there. I always consider myself instructional designer. And now I'm working with Angela as a strategic consultant within Open Culture. Angela and I worked together at a previous professional association, and I said I'm following her wherever she goes, and she's let me do it this long. So uh, that's where a lot of my work is now in terms of professional association work or professional development work. And then I teach, as Angela mentioned, we're teaching. We're in the classroom, in the online classroom. And I do it at a doctoral level. I've also been recently doing it at an undergrad level with hybrid in-person courses. So a lot of what we're going to talk about comes from our experiences. And as Angela said, it's not going to be a tech talk. That's not where we're at, right? We're talking about what's possible um, with the tech, right? But really looking at that human-centered design component. And so that's a little bit about me and the work that we're doing, from AI literacies, theory to practice. And Angela, I'll turn it back over to you, I think.
Sounds good. So I'm going to lay out how we're going to spend our time together, and how this will flow. As I mentioned before, I'm not really a fan of sit and get types of things. And I really love to lean into the community that we can build together. So just know that this is meant to be a space where we can share, and not just our insights, but also our big questions that we have, the things that are challenging us, and know that Josh and I are not going anywhere, that we're going to be with you for quite some time in terms of supporting and helping the amazing work that you're doing to make sure that teaching and learning is as accessible and as impactful as possible within this age of AI. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how this time will flow. I'll also mention too, I always steal from my mentor, Dr. Jerry Hanley, and my dear friend who always says, give a gift and not a burden. We have a lot of gifts that we'll be giving you today. One of those gifts, several of you may have received already by signing up for this, and that's access to our award-winning open course that we built with that UNESCO IITE data, as well as information for how you can share the course with your colleagues and also with your learners. And Dr. Mahabali has already shared, I believe, that course with many, many, many of her students. And one of the big findings that she shared with us was that the students said afterwards, we wish that all of our faculty could take this course because it was really about mindsets more than just the technical skills that come with AI. Certainly the technical pieces are in there too, but they really appreciated the mindset around being curious, but also cautious about the technology and really thinking through what does it mean to use AI that's aligned to our values. So with that being said, today is a kickoff. This time is about opening something together and also getting to know the people in this room, both live and then asynchronously, with all of us thinking as colleagues together, no matter where we're starting from. So from here, from this moment in time, this journey is going to become yours. As I mentioned, there's that open self-paced course called AI Literacies Unlocked that's waiting for you. And you're going to move through that after this session in your own time. Today will sort of be Josh and my introduction and contextualization of that content. We're not going to repeat that content to you. So everything will be new within that open course. But today we're going to kind of give you an inside look at some of the things that we've been finding, including some of the research that we've been watching longitudinally and temporally, which has been pretty exciting. You're going to move through that course in your own time, whatever order fits your context and even who your learners are. For some of us in the room, our learners might actually be faculty or staff, not just students within a course. And we're going to show you exactly how to step into that course before we close today. Also, as I said before, this hour is not something that ends and disappears. We're actually going to come back in the fall. We'll talk about that a little bit at the end of this session. But we're going to come together as a community to share what we've tried and even what you've learned along the way, good, bad, neutral, everything in between. So really think of today as the first gathering rather than a one-time event. So before we jump into the research, and the ideas all behind this, let's take a moment to begin where this actually starts, and that's with you and where you are already doing this work. So easy place to start. Wherever you are with AI, you're already doing something with it or noticing it move through your work. And that's exactly what I want to hear about a little bit. And Josh and I will be watching the chat. We'll give some time for you to cogitate and think. You can also answer in just a couple of words. It doesn't have to be an epic answer. I say that laughing a little bit because that's the way I am. I'm very wordy. Brevity is not my strong suit. But in the chat, I'd love for you to share one way that AI is already a part of your work or your teaching right now. And it doesn't have to be a success story, doesn't have to be a polished practice. It can be something small, it can be something that you're still figuring out, or even something that you are wary of. And just one real way it's already showing up. And Sandy, you win the award for going so fast. But keep it coming. Drop these into the chat, and you can make it as simple or as complex as you'd like. And then we'll Josh and I spend a little time talking through this. But Sandy, I love that you put thought partner. That's probably one of the biggest shifts that I had in my usage. I know that the field when I first started was really talking about prompt engineering, and my background is in computer science. And so I really understood inputs and outputs, but I saw AI as a very different tool than just an input and output. And one of the things that really stood out for me was that when I opened up a little more and I tried to be reflexive, And I leaned into what it meant for me to engage in dialogue. That prompt engineering talk sort of slipped away in some ways that I thought were particularly profound. And when Josh and I continued to do our research, we've been doing this research for the past 3 years. We found that that was the change and the shift that was happening within the world as well. That communicative AI literacies were really changing things. All right, I got excited about Thought Partner, but using AI to brainstorm ideas. What else are you seeing, Josh, that's standing out to you? Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll stop myself from going into thought partner because I'm with you there. I love that was one of the first ways I thought about, right, borrowing from Ethan Mollick's co-intelligence piece, and I think that's so helpful. It gets to the mirror piece we'll talk about later as well.
Yeah.
But I also love the honesty from Janet, right? Janet says a big headache is how she's viewing AI, right?
Yeah.
And for sure, I think that critical piece we'll talk about, and you'll notice we're going to connect a lot of these back to the literacies that you'll explore. But that's part of it, right? Is recognizing that there are some, I'll call them gains and losses. I know, Angela, you call it use and a gain,
Yeah.
but that's something to be honest about, right? We don't want to just pretend everything is perfectly great with this. So I appreciate that. Bonnie, I saw your curiosity word. Anytime I see the word curiosity, and Bonnie, appreciate your podcast too. It's great to have you
Yeah.
here. Um, the curiosity that AI helps you remain curious. I love that because the risk there, to Janet's point, is that it flattens things out, right? But if we use it as a thought partner, as a way to remain curious, that's excellent. So those are a couple things I'm seeing.
Yeah, I love that, we do have efficiency still in here. I certainly use AI as an efficiency partner and as an assistant, but that's not the leading conversation here, which is great to see that you all are thinking about it in other ways of how do I challenge my ideas? How do I do this work with students to actually engage them in real world practice? This is great. And yeah, the last one here for anonymous Zoom user, the I don't like to depend on it for my education because sometimes it doesn't give the right information. That is not sometimes, it's all the time that it does that. And I think that the context and the nuance that we bring into the space is even more important than ever. We're going to have a lot of conversations in coming days, weeks, months, and years, I think, about what does expertise mean? And that's really going to get us thinking very differently about our role as educators within the classroom. How can we help our learners become critical consumers of the content that comes out and be able to validate that content so that they're just not leaning on those outputs, which can be very tempting. Josh and I had a conversation recently about if our LLM was an instructional designer in our office working for us, they probably would have been fired,
Right.
very, very quickly, because AI is able to produce things that look like they are right on, and even produce things that we have trained the AI models on developing and doing. But then when you sort of look under the hood, sometimes you're not seeing what you would imagine a human would produce after you had invested time and effort training these tools. So this is fantastic. Yeah, good at producing mediocre content, not deep. I like to think about it as the expression I say a whole lot. You can't ask an electrician to be a plumber, right? So in the same way that if you go into an AI tool and you ask it to give you outputs, it's going to give you what it generalizes. That's the way that it's programmed. That's the way that it works. It's not programmed to create the unique and the very specific. But we humans, we have job security there because we're very good at that. That's the part that we're good at and that we bring to the table.
And we have to remind our students that too, right? I know you and I both do that in the classroom because of the, yeah, anonymous Zoom users comment, right? That's so true. And to recognize that is in itself a skill and a mindset to know it's going to get things wrong. I mean, how many times it gets dates wrong that we try to work with? It's simple things that it should be able to look at a calendar, right? But being able to help students see that, because the tendency would be submitted to AI, submitted to instructor, right? But building those things in, and that really gets back to Janet's point. That's it's work, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks you all.
It connects to Hoda what you said about Ethan Malik moving into coexistence versus co-intelligence. We talk about this a whole lot, Josh and I, when we talk about positionality and identity, and folks will say, "Oh, I have a relationship with AI," or "AI is thinking." And these words, the word choice, and not just because I come from a linguistics background, but this word choice is important because it signals how we're positioning these tools within our lives and whether we feel like they're engaging in human action to the point that we even went into our LLMs early on after we created our taxonomy. And I was using ChatGPT at the time, and it wanted to assume that it could express AI literacies, and I was like, hold on, is that a human thing that AI literacies come up, or is that a computer thing too? And I got to the point where it's like, well, AI can replicate the development of AI literacies. So all great conversations, and it brings it home to this point that I want to share with you right now. If you scroll through the chat, you'll notice something that no two of these actions, these items are the same. Some of you are using AI to design. Some of you are using AI as an efficiency partner to give you feedback. We notice translation in there. Some are planning, some are even pushing back on AI's thinking or even your own thinking. There are as many answers in here as there are people, and I know that you only gave one, but you probably have several that you could have shared. But what I want you to hold on to is that when something as big as AI lands in the middle of our work, that the instinct is to want one answer, one blueprint, one clear policy, one checklist that finally tells us the right way to do this. And, it would be a relief if that existed, but it doesn't. And as the chat just showed, there are as many good ways into this work as there are educators and learners doing it. And that variety is the most important thing to understand about AI literacies. So if there is no single map, there's no single blueprint, how do we make sense of all of it? And that's where Josh and my research really comes into play. So here's what we did. This was about 3 years ago that UNESCO reached out and was asking us to capture perspectives and practices of educators all over the globe. And we formed a small team and we spent several years listening to educators across 6 different continents. We still don't have our person from Antarctica, where we should get that so we can say all 7 continents to describe how they actually use AI in their teaching and their work, and how they were actually seeing their learners using AI in their teaching and work, not just anecdotal assumptions. And what we found is the thing that I most want you to carry out today. So, as different as all of your answers look, they also connect together. And the ways that people engage with AI across these 8 different dimensions that we've identified show that they gather into patterns, and that these patterns surface again and again across very different contexts and roles. And we call these 8 elements that cluster the dimensions of AI literacies. This may look familiar to you all who have been doing work within digital literacies for quite some time, and that's because this is a remix of the work of our dear friend and scholar, Dr. Doug Belshaw, who in 2012 identified 8 essential elements of digital literacies. And in the same way that these 8 C's are the same, you can always think about the rich history and work that we've brought to the table around digital learning through that lens and that context of AI. And certainly there is nuance and there are slight differentiations, but what holds true is that AI literacies are digital literacies. So I'm not going to walk you through all 8 right now because getting to know them is what's going to come after today. That open course that we talked about before is the way that you can become familiar with these 8. And we're going to share a little bit more about how you can kind of enter into that work. But for this moment, I just want you to do one thing. Look back at what you put into the chat, whatever you named, whether it was designing, questioning, translating, creating, it already lives somewhere here within these 8 dimensions. You have been building your AI literacies all along. You simply had not necessarily seen the shape of it or how those pieces connected. And once you can see that shape, something else comes into view. So over this past, I would say, year and a half, specifically watching educators work with these literacies, watching learners work with these literacies, we have come to figure out a couple of things that change how all of this feels within the research. These are our most recent findings, and Josh and I would love to share them with you right now, if you do not mind. So the first thing that we learned is one that really takes the pressure off. So I'm going to start with this one. Every one of the eight dimensions is two things at the same time. It's something that you draw on when you engage with AI. It's something that you use, and it is something that you grow in the very act of engaging, which means that none of us has to feel ready before we begin using AI. These literacies grow through the work itself. So the doing is the learning. There's not a moment where somebody's going to hand you a badge and say, you are now ready to use AI, or you are now ready to experiment, test, and play. But for you, many of you faculty, staff, this is the reframe that matters most, that when your learners engage with AI in your courses, their literacies are developing, whether anyone has named them or not. And the same is true for you. So wherever you feel you stand with all of this, you're already further along than it feels. You can take that pressure off that, oh my gosh, everybody is so much more ahead than we are. No, no, no. This is really important for you to know that you're where you need to be, and your own criticality, the pace that you're taking, is all fine as long as you're entering in with a spirit of curiosity and openness. All right. Now that we've taken the pressure off, I'm going to give it over to you, Josh, to share the next thing that we learned.
Yeah. So not only does it look differently for everyone, each dimension, it's that those dimensions cluster, right? So they combine to do different things in different contexts. This early on, one of the things that we saw, and we actually have a map that visualizes this across our global research, is where the dimensions were clustering or how they were clustering. And so we saw tight clusters of two or three dimensions, and it was showing us that these clusters were not staying the same either, right? So dimensions are unique, but also the clusters were unique, and they were maturing, they were changing, some were swapping in and out. And so it's a big piece for us is the constellations. Now we observe four, five, sometimes six dimensions working together. Communicative AI literacy is one of my favorite because of my own background in communication and rhetorics. That one in particular has moved from transactional prompting. Angela mentioned this, the big push for prompt engineering early on that we saw, and our research was showing, well, is that really the way things are trending? We never put out a prompt engineering guide, anything like that, because we saw this as something different. And that's what the dimensions clustering together was showing us, that it's a much richer dialogic engagement shaped by identity and purpose. And so many dimensions come together through that constellation image, not just communicative AI literacies, right? We're not just zooming in and honing our skills around communicative. No, it's how do we see that working with cultural and critical, right? And then the field is continuing to change and shape those, and it really does. It changes based on context and where you're at and how those are working together, and it's an intentional work. The field is getting more sophisticated, and it's reflecting the growth that we're seeing with AI in our institutions, in our societies. The more that we see these constellations changing and maturing. So that's our second lesson, that they're becoming more mature and complex as we get into this work.
And Josh, it really sits in accord with what Janet put in the chat about, whether we should even call AI a tool. It underestimates that
Mm,
impact on us and our whole environment. I think that this one is something that we really saw with the mapping of the constellations, or those clustering of the AI literacies, to say that we were only seeing one thing, we're only feeling one thing, really undersold the complex skills and mindsets that were related to AI and AI usage. So next one, and this one makes my heart the biggest, makes me so happy because it's something that we have not historically been good at within academia. But across several contexts, we saw students being invited into the process of shaping how their institutions were approaching AI. And this was really compelling because we know that when students have agency within that process, when they have agency over their own academic journey, confidence becomes durable. And this was really, really important to us as we looked at a lot of institutions where the student leaders were not just being paraded out, asked to give their feedback and then walked back, but actually sought many institutions that we've been working with, the student leaders were shaping strategy. They were building projects almost as folks working for a client within the university that would have great benefit to the faculty, staff, and students. And the learners were even contributing to global research, including some of the work that we've been doing with our case example database, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But we always talk about how we want to create more active learning experiences, more experiential learning, and we've been really heartened to see that with AI showing up, we have seen a lot of institutions positioning the learners as leaders within this conversation and really preparing them to be the folks that are leading out in the workforce and out in the world beyond the classroom, which has been pretty great.
It is a beautiful thing to see. And it's a fun conversation that we're having with institutions about the role that their learners have, because it's not as quick and dry as it may seem. Some institutions still have some hesitation, right, about how to bring in learners to the conversations. But uh, I think AI is one of those things where there's no escaping that anymore. We have to
Yeah.
go directly to the source. So the fourth thing that we learned is how this work travels. When AI first arrived, most educators kept their experiments to themselves. They tried things quietly behind their own doors, unsure whether it was even allowed. There was this word shame occasionally attached to, particularly in our conversation with K-12 educators. This idea of shame attached to exploring AI and how it could be used. But over this past year, that has changed, right? We're seeing that not only in professional corporate world has it just become, way maybe too far down the other spectrum, the other end of the spectrum. But people started talking more openly in the education circles about how they're using it. And we're hearing how they're trying it, what worked, what failed, the conversations that you all just had with us in the chat. And every time someone shared, it gives us and someone else permission to try. It's one of my favorite things about asking questions publicly is that someone else probably has that question, right? Someone else is wanting to try this out. And so you give permission to someone else when you share what's working, what's not working. And that matters more than almost anything today. So it's it, it's your part in this community, and we emphasize this community piece, right? You're stepping into a field that has chosen to be generous with one another. What once made this work hard, the isolation around it is exactly what we're trying to do with this community mindset, the community within the course itself, the community you're part of here today, and that will continue on. So you're not joining this alone. We're all trying to figure this out and navigate these AI literacies together for ourselves, for our learners, for institutions, for society. And that gets us to the next thing that we learned, which is AI has moved from this answer bot, right, which connects to this early on reductive approach to AI, which was prompt engineering. It's moved from that to a mirror of our own humanity, for good and bad, right? And so I mentioned that we're seeing this in the corporate space. I do some consulting in that space, and there's the tension, right? Of sometimes corporate values are not always showing up the way that they say that they should when they're having conversations about AI. Same thing with education spaces. We have to think carefully about what are we mirroring? And that's where our humanity plays a key role. So over the course of this research, as we listen to educators describe their evolving relationships with AI, that theme kept surfacing that none of us really expected. And it's that we're showing our own curiosity, creativity, and humanity when we engage with AI. And it's something built by machines is making us more aware, makes us human. Sometimes I use the phrase, let's be a little subversive with how we're using AI. We know that it may not have all of the best intentions, despite the marketing language around AI. But how can we use it to make us more human? Again, my own story with technology and education is how can I use this to give more people access to education and empower more folks to join in and think critically and join the conversations. I think that's one of the most important insights that this work has produced is that we're having these conversations with AI, but it's really with ourselves and with our own values, our own humanity, and a chance for us to explore deeply and set aside time to figure out what does that mean? What does that mirror look like?
Yeah. And I've had a couple of personal moments and also professional moments where I myself have, gone to AI, and I know my learners have gone to AI to feel a little less alone and a little less untethered in a world that I think can challenge us. So the tech can't and won't replace the humanity. It won't replace the light within us. But if it helps us find the light again in some way, shape, or form, like a learner who, maybe is feeling a little bit unbalanced and struggling with all of the different competing priorities that they have, and if AI in a moment, and I'm speaking about a specific student in one of my classes that I had in the past who was going through some really, really tough life choices and life decisions that he was using AI so that he had just somewhere to voice all of the thoughts that he couldn't necessarily speak out loud. And it opened him up to the class that he was in with me. It helped him gain some confidence and trust in me and the folks at my institution being there to support him during those difficult times. That I see as a good, again, not replacing humans, but allowing him to see a different path ahead of him that he chose to walk as a human, which was really great.
And not to slow us down, but I really love this idea of the student using AI as a mirror too. And something that Angela and I have worked into a couple of other professional development offerings is how do we give the permission to a student to use AI to mirror their own goals, their own value system, right? Because for so long we've had these massive systems that were institutionally designed, an LMS, an SIS, student information system, learning management system. Now they have the ability to create a system of their own. How can AI mirror that for them, you know, rather than depending on a system to try and do that can't. So I love that example, Angela, and
Yeah.
think that gives us some permission to try that out.
Yeah, I was gonna say especially too because all of these systems historically were designed for one type of student, and as we know, we can't treat our learners as a monolithic population. That we all bring different things to the table. We have different lived experiences, different challenges, different goals, and if AI is a tool that can give us more space and room to interrogate where we've made those mistakes in the past, like what you said, Hoda, it's challenged the gaps that we've been ignoring. And I think that's a big one that we've been ignoring is how do we create, space for personalization and even for metacognition for our learners to understand what they're learning as they're learning it and why it matters. And how they have choices over their learning process. Those are things that, man alive, I wish that I had had when I was, in school way back in the day. I usually learned that stuff the hard way, where I had a class where I didn't feel like my teacher was supporting me, and I was always a good student, and I had enough awareness to be like, well, I'm a good student, so if I'm not doing well, then like, what about the other people that are in the class with me? We should be learning from positive models as opposed to deficit models. And if this gets us to a place where our learners can be like, oh wow, like I really do have the ability to explore a topic deeply and to engage in criticality and to compare different opinions and thoughts and research over, over large spans of time that builds your muscles, that builds your confidence. And if anything, I think that that's the biggest thing that we can give to our learners as a gift. So, last thing that we want to share with you is about that agency that I was talking about who gets to shape AI and how it shows up in a place of learning. And for a while, I think the conversation out loud, not necessarily what was actually happening, but the conversation out loud was that things were top down, that policies were, going to arrive and that people would be told what they could and could not do. But that has been shifting in the most encouraging way, that we're seeing across institutions that the people closest to teaching and increasingly students themselves were being invited to the table to help shape the strategy itself with a real hand in where the strategy was changing and growing. And to be sure, we have a long way to go here. I'm not saying that we've made it. But we have seen that when people have real agency in the process, that their confidence becomes durable. It becomes something that belongs to them, that's steadier than any single tool or even tools of evolving over time. So as you move through this work, you're doing more than learning to use AI. You are among the people who get to decide what good practice looks like here, in whether it's in your courses, whether it's across your discipline or field, whether it's preparing our learners for a future that we can't yet fully see across your institution. And that idea that this work belongs to the people doing it is exactly where Josh is going to pick us up here with the next point, because it belongs to all of us, that none of us should be carrying this work by ourselves. So over to you, Josh.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I will stay right there on that idea that none of us should be carrying this alone. Right. And so it's why Angela and I love this particular community and the work that those of you who are leading this community are doing and taking us into this space of AI and navigating it together. And we've seen it over and over that educators who make the most progress with AI are the ones who found other people to think with, to compare notes with, to borrow a good idea from a hard week. And that's my personal story. I know it's the story of all of those in our particular research group and community of practice. And so one of the examples that we most recently saw was with a statewide network of colleges, faculty across different campuses, very different campuses here in the States, with very different students, started sharing what they were trying. And it was, we could tell it was new for some of them to share that and to be in an open space of community and a safe space. But that whole network began learning faster than any single campus could on its own because nobody had to start from scratch when somebody nearby had already tried it and could share. And that's what a community of practice does. It turns all of our separate experiments into a shared body of knowledge that every one of us gets to draw on. We get to benefit from that. And we have built a place where that sharing lives, which I want to show you now. And it's called the Case Example Database. It's a growing open library of real examples from educators around the world showing how AI literacies came to life in a real course and a real project. Every time I go to this database, I am just overwhelmed, one, by the generosity of sharing that folks have committed to here, but also the ideas and what's happening. And I am inspired and I want to try things out. And that's what makes it powerful is that it works in both directions. So when you're stuck, you can come here, see how someone else approached the very thing you're facing. And when you find something that works for you, please share it. Add your example so the next person learns from what you did. You don't need to take any of that in right now, right? We promised this was an opening. This is just the first entry into the work that we're doing with the self-paced course and the applied example database. But for now, just know it's there. It's built for educators by educators just like you. And that's the best way to feel what a community can look like is to check out this resource, use it. And now I want to bring this community that we're in this moment and hear a little bit more from you because you've heard a lot from us. So in the chat, if you could share one thing about AI in your teaching or your work that you would love to think through with other people? So we've mentioned the ideas here, the community to practice, the reason we're here. So let's talk about it. What do you need help with? What would you want some help with? It doesn't have to be polished, doesn't have to be solved immediately, just something real that's on your mind. And go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll give you a few moments to get those in, and then we'll respond to some of them. And hopefully, you're even going to make connections with other people during this next few moments, these next few moments to say, hey, I want to follow up with that person, right? Or I want to build on that idea.
I know that one that I would share while people are thinking and writing is I would love to do more, and this is something that I actually I'm going to reach out to Maha after this to say maybe this could be a part of the MyFest community work, but I talked about creativity and AI as a mirror last year at my fest, and I do some work that has us using AI to create art with our hands. I come from a painting and programming background. I was computer science and studio art. So I play around with AI, sort of prompting us to do things more in more analog ways. So one of the projects that I would love to figure out is how can we get people to own their creativity across different modes, not just digitally, but kind of going back to our roots is something that I've been thinking about. Hazem put automation using AI. That's a big one. Josh is really, really good with Claude Cowork. I've learned a lot from him. And, usually we'll have a brainstorming meeting and I'll say, have we asked AI if AI could help us do this? And one of the big ways that we did it was we were looking to not pay thousands of dollars for qualitative coding software. So I said, have we asked AI if it can help us with this? And Josh ended up building a whole collaborative coding platform for qualitative coding, which you can put the link in the chat, Josh, if people want to see. But
For
yeah,
sure. Yeah. And the biggest lesson around that was this idea of it's a systems mindset, right? And that AI gets us into, especially when we're building with it, it gets us into this I don't know, this really unique way of thinking about what we're doing with AI. Because I didn't come from, I mean, I had basic coding skills, but I did not come from a coding background, much less a software development. And it gave me an appreciation, but also really opens up what's possible. I think we're a decade away from even realizing the full possibilities of what's out there right now, this moment, with the AI tools that we have at our. So yeah, absolutely, that's something. Um, to keep exploring and explore as possible.
yeah, there's some good ones here. Krista, I love your concern about AI brainstorming taking away from the process of critical thinking. And actually, I watched a talk with Dr. Michael Crow, who's the president of Arizona State University, and they're doing amazing things with innovation and technology and have over the years. And he had an educator in the room, just say, don't you think that the rigor, that the tension that creates learning is being eroded by AI. And he said no. President Crow said no. And then he engaged all of us. It was a big room of thousands of people in the Socratic method that he was using with an AI bot, where he was asking all sorts of deep questions about physics. And he's not a physicist. He's a sociologist. But he guided us through a process of inquiry that I was like, oh my gosh, if my learning process had been like that back in the day, I would have been so appreciative because it still had that tension, that grit that comes from the learning process, but with AI positioned in the absolute right way and the learner guiding the process. And certainly, Josh and I have a lot of things to say about even just the writing process and how AI absolutely requires human criticality in order to use it effectively for the writing process, but that the assessments that guide students into doing that work have historically needed to change for a very, very, very long time. So it's one of these places where it is a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for us to get some things right that we have not been really attending to in some strong and meaningful ways for quite some time. This
I'm
is,
noticing that the word student is popping up quite frequently. The last six, right? It's come up, and
yep,
so I just want to take the moment to say it's okay to zoom out from the tech piece, right? To say, hey, here's what's possible with automation, or here's what's possible in this particular thing, but have a conversation. I find that that's one of the most helpful ways that I've experienced. The issues or concerns about AI usage is having a conversation with learners. I share with them my frustrations, my experiments, how I'm
yep,
using it, so the transparency there. Then they begin to share and they begin to ask questions, and they'll ask questions about what's right or wrong, and quote unquote. But then they'll share cool things that they're doing with it too, right? And so I just want to kind of say we don't have to teach skills. We also are talking about mindsets, right? And that's what AI literacies does. Have them think through it. And that's one of the most profitable ways that we can use our time with our learners is have them think through it and own it themselves, do some of that metacognitive work. So
yep.
just with the examples I'm seeing there coming in, I wanted to share that.
This is great. And yeah, Krista, you had asked for resources. We'll definitely share a bunch of things with you. I also think that that talk that I referenced, that Michael Crow did, I believe it's recorded on the, it was at the ASU Agentic AI conference from last year, and I believe they recorded it and it's available on the web. So I will try to find that and get that link to all of you. But Josh, you beat me to it. The case example database that Josh just put in there, I'm thinking about a lot of the educators that have put things in there. Liza Long, specifically, who teaches writing, she's done a lot of work with her students where she opens up an LLM and actually goes through the process of completing assignments, and they talk about all the errors that come out of AI, and they talk about the tension and the process of learning and growing with AI. And she said that the biggest change that she experienced was that her learners, many of which are international, for whom English is not their first language, they responded back at the end of the semester and they said that they felt so much confidence in using these tools because their instructor was willing to be vulnerable in front of them and try things out and be transparent about her use and her assessment of usage within the classroom. So some of that is within the database there too. We're going to hold on to this chat because we want this to be a courageous space where you can do all of this work and where you have room and latitude to engage in these things that might seem far off, that might seem too challenging to work on. The community of practice that we're creating here is exactly the space that we want to make room for that work to happen. And before we get too far, I'm just kind of watching time, but I think we're pretty good on time still. We want to point you to another resource as well that kind of contextualizes how all of us are coming into this work too. So over to you, Josh.
All right. Yeah. The community has taught us something important is that AI is living in about three rooms at once. And WCET has done a great job of calling this out. In the first room, you know best, it's pedagogy, right? So this domain of pedagogy, the choices you make about how AI shows up in your teaching, your students learning, the very conversations that we're having today. Most professional development happens there, right? The second room is operations, and that's how your institution actually runs with AI and advising and support and the everyday systems around your students. We would argue get involved in those conversations, right? You are becoming, if not already, experts in. The way AI has transformed the teaching and learning space, and that should inform how the operations of an institution move forward, right? So get involved in those conversations. And the third room is governance, and that's where the policies, the principles that decide what's allowed, what's protected, which is just as important, right? And where the lines are drawn. And we are seeing so many institutions still struggle with this. An early policy was too harsh or too lenient, wasn't clear enough. I'm talking with the university now who they want to make every course a red, green, or yellow, and it just doesn't work, right? This is a much more intense, in-depth conversation. And so thinking about these three rooms where you can engage with them is part of the WCET work. And to help with that, we put together a living resource that we want to share that brings these three rooms or pillars, if you want to phrase them that way, into practice. And it's called the AI Literacies in Practice Playbook. So Angela and I co-authored this and published it through WCET to help institutional teams operationalize AI literacies across those three pillars. And it's a practical companion to the strategic work your leadership teams are doing, that you're doing, that you can engage with, whether you're here by yourself as a member of your institution or you're part of an institution where your team is here. This is something that we're seeing really work well as a resource at the institutional level, and encourage you to consider that. And so everything we said about those three rooms is true for you as faculty, as staff, as leaders, but it's true for everyone who works alongside you. And that's what we encourage you to do is don't try to own this all yourself. You've heard that from a couple of different angles here, right? So you're not alone in this community of practice, but you shouldn't be the only one at your institution navigating these conversations. And so engage, whether you're faculty, staff, or leaders, find a faculty member, find a staff member, find leaders to begin exploring from this map in the same language helps with that. That's what we're giving you in a lot of senses is some vocabulary around this nebulous, ephemeral conversation around AI that sometimes it feels like, where that everyone's reading from, and we're going to say the same sky because we're talking about constellations here, rather than tracing their own. And that's the wider picture. That's the picture that helps you connect beyond your classroom, but what's also happening in your classroom and have that alignment. And that brings us to the most practical question: where do you actually begin? And we're going to show you that. And so the next slide has the course. You're going to start here. AI Literacies Unlocked, and it's a free self-paced course. You've probably received an email. Some of you I know received an email from the enrollments that you did with American University in Cairo. If you're not registered, Angela just put in the chat a link to get registered. And what it is an online course around the 8 dimensions you saw earlier. And that you're actually experiencing the second version of this course that was relaunched for AI Literacies Day just in April. And we've arranged it around constellations. We talked about the work that constellations are doing now. And so each part, short, practical, build around things you can try and do in your teaching, share with others, share with the global community of practice that we're part of in this course. And now the course is free, open for anyone. You don't have to stop with people in this room. You can share it with anyone, right? Share it with someone. Give them a particular module to check out if you want them to have just one quick thing to look in. We promise it's not overwhelming. It's at your own pace. The videos are excellent. Just great content. You'll get to see more of Angela, and
Oh,
it's awesome. So with
I don't know
that,
if that
over
part's
to
a
you,
gift.
Angela.
Yeah,
Speaking of more of Angela, there we go.
I'm gonna jump ahead. Oh, and yeah, if you need to drop off, I know that some of you may have a hard stop on the hour, but this is being recorded. But I wanted to give a couple of moments to Hoda to talk a little bit about what's coming up next in September.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Ken, for sharing this overview of hopefully what will be a very rewarding experience. I'm speaking on behalf of AUC Center for Learning and Teaching, and we've been doing a lot of work with our faculty and our academic staff around AI literacies and building those competencies together. So this is really what we were looking for, and it's a great summer opportunity. And when we met, Angela, Josh, Mahabeli, and I, we talked about bookending. So this is the first bookend. September 28th is our annual CLT symposium. So we are looking forward to our faculty and hopefully a hybrid option for anyone who would like to join from the MyFest community or from our other communities that are here today to share what they learned from the course. Hopefully to have submitted some new use cases or the cases on the course itself, what you actually learned and how you applied it and what you have built and what you hope to test with your students in the fall. I'm looking forwards to completing the course. I just started today, so I'm not the
Oh,
exemplar
yay.
started today. And when we talked about this, Angela, it is a unique experience to really go through something like this together. to
Yes.
get an opportunity to share. We will be sharing other opportunities for you to come together as a group of AUC faculty, share your experiences so far. And thank you for bringing this all together for us and for providing us with our first bookend slash kickoff for today. And thank you everyone for joining. This has been great.
Yeah.
Yay.
Thank you all so much. Really
Yeah, thank
appreciate
you all.
it. Yeah, and don't be a stranger. We will make the slides available. Hoda, I'll send you the link for the AUC folks, and then Ken for and Yasser is here. I think for other folks, we'll put the slide deck. I think we did that last year for MyFest. We had our slides up on the MyFest website. So all of this will be available. But if for any reason you have any trouble finding Josh and I, you can also reach us through LinkedIn and through our email. We're here. We're your friends in this work, and we're not going anywhere. We talked about bookends, but it's going to be a very long bookshelf. We'll keep on adding books to the bookshelf. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you both. This was excellent. Thank you, everyone who joined.
Yes,
Thank
Yeah, thanks.
you.
So many people here. Great.
it's fantastic.
All right, I'll stop my recording here.